Then Jacob journeyed towards the land of the people of the east, and there he saw a large well and 3 flocks of sheep waiting to be watered, because it was out of that well that the sheep were watered. And there was a large stone at the top of the well, and whenever it was time for the flock to be watered, the shepherds had to come in, roll the stone, water the sheep, and roll the stone back again. And Jacob went down towards the well, where he saw a group of men, and he asked them, "Where are you from, my brothers?" And they replied, "Ah, we are from Haran." He said, "Oh, have you heard of Laban, the son of Nahor?" To which they answered, "Yes, yes, we know him." And Jacob quickly asked them, "Is it well with him?" And they answered, "It is well. Look, look, there comes his daughter, Rachel, with the sheep. Look." And Jacob lifted his eyes and looked. And he quickly told the men, it's broad daylight. It's not time for the flock to be watered. Why don't you just roll the stone, water the sheep, and go and pasture them?" But the men said, we cannot do that. We have to wait till all the flock have gathered, and then we water them, then we close the stone. And as Jacob and the men were speaking, Rachel came down with her father's sheep, because she kept them. And Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his own mother's brother. And Jacob saw the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. And he rolled away the stone and watered the sheep, and lifted his voice and cried and clung to Rachel and kissed her and said, "I am your kinsman. I am Rebekah's son." And immediately Rachel ran to tell Laban of the news. When Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran down to meet him, and they embraced one another. And Laban said, "You must come back with me to my house." And so they went to Laban's house, where Jacob told him all these things. And Laban said to Jacob, "You must stay here with me. Please, you are my kinsman. You must stay here with me." And Jacob abided 1 month. And as time went by, Laban looked at Jacob and said, "You are my kinsman, but you cannot work without wages for me. Tell me, name your wage. Go ahead, name your wage." Now, Laban had 2 daughters. Leah, the older one, had beautiful eyes, but Rachel, she was comely and beautiful, and Jacob loved Rachel. So he said to Laban, "I will work 7 years for Rachel. Please give her to me to be my wife." And Laban said, "It is better for me to give her to you than to keep her in my house. You stay, you work, I will give Rachel to you." And so Jacob worked 7 long years for Rachel. But the years ran as swiftly as days, because Jacob, loved Rachel. When the years were over and complete, Jacob went to Laban and said, "Give me my wife, give me Rachel, for my time is up." And Laban said, called all the people together and made a huge feast. And in the night, Laban sent Leah into Jacob's tent. And Jacob went into Leah that night. And in the morning, he realized that it was Leah. He quickly went to Jacob and said, "What have you done to me? Why have you deceived me? I worked for Rachel for 7 years, and you have done this to me?" And Laban answered, Well, it is not customary in our country to give the younger one before the older one now. You just work another 7 years for me, for Rachel. Finish a week, I will give her to you. Go, go, go now and work 7 years. And Jacob went back and worked another 7 years for Rachel. When her week was complete, he went to Laban, and Laban gave Rachel to Jacob as his wife. When Rachel saw that she bore no children, but Leah was blessed, she began to envy Leah. And she went to Jacob and said, "Give me children or I will die." Laban was angry, and Jacob stood back and said, "Am I in God's stead that I am stopping you from bearing the fruit of your womb?" So Rachel said, "Take my maid, Bilhah, go into her, that she may bear a son on my knees, and that I may have a child through her." And Jacob went into Bilhah. Bilhah conceived and bore a son. And Rachel said, "Ha! The Lord has heard my voice, and I am going to name him Dan." And Bilhah conceived again and bore a son. And now Rachel said, "With many, many wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed, and I will name him Naphtali." Now Leah had ceased bearing. Poor Jacob. Leah said, "This is my maid, Zilpah. Go into her, that she may bear a son." And Jacob went into Zilpah, and Zilpah conceived and bore a son. And Leah said, "Good fortune, I'm going to name him Gad." Zilpah conceived again and bore a son. And now Leah said, "Happy am I, and all the women will call me happy, so I will name him Asher." When it was time for the wheat harvest, Reuben, the eldest, went out into the field and found mandrakes. He brought some back to his mother Leah. And Rachel looked at the mandrakes and asked Leah, "May I have some of those mandrakes?" Now Leah said, "Is it a small matter that you first have taken my husband from me, and now you want my mandrakes?" Rachel said, "Your husband will lie with you tonight because of those mandrakes." And Leah quickly gave them to Rachel. When Jacob came home from the field that evening, Leah went outside of the tent to meet Jacob and said, "Lie with me tonight, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." And Jacob lay with Leah that night. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and said, "The Lord has given me my hire, because I gave my maid as a wife to my husband, and I have named him Issachar." And Leah conceived again and bore another son, and said, "I have borne my husband 6 sons. It is indeed a good dowry, and I will name him Zebulun, for the Lord has honored me." And after all this, she bore a daughter, Dinah. Now the Lord remembered Rachel. Now the Lord remembered Rachel and opened her womb. And Rachel conceived and bore a son and called him Joseph, for the Lord had rolled away the reproach from her. And Rachel quickly added, "May the Lord add another son to me." And as they were journeying towards Bethlehem, they were on their way at Ephrath, when Rachel went into hard labor. As she struggled, the midwife looked at her and said, "Do not be afraid, for you are going to bear another son." But Rachel's soul had already left her body. She had died, and in passing, she named this son Benoni. But Jacob came quickly and named him Benjamin, and Rachel died. Jacob buried Rachel on the way to Ephrath, and upon her grave he built a pillar, and that is called the pillar of the tomb of Rachel, and it stands there even till this day. And Jacob and his family pitched their tents beyond the Tower of Eder. Thank you.